Hello and welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, oxygenaddict.com.
For all your triathlon coaching, training plans and a supportive community of other athletes racing the same races as you.
Bike House. Oh no, it's wearebikehouse.co.uk, isn't it, for Bike House?
Yeah.
Bike House, the bike shop at wearebikehouse.co.uk.
For all your bicycle needs.
Sweet. Raceforce.co.uk.
They do race tours to loads of European races and transport your bike there safely.
In a lovely, great big van. And I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Helen Murray. Helen, how are you, my friend?
Rob, I'm well today, thank you. I'm really, really well, and I'm really excited.
You're really excited, and I know why. Tell us what's coming up on today's show, Helen.
We have an interview on today's show, a full-on interview. It's a good one with four-time Ironman world champion and Ironman world record holder, none other than Chrissie Wellington.
The wonderful Chrissie, the Rocket Wellington.
That's it. So we got, 5 minutes with her about a month ago on a finish line somewhere. And
right.
Yeah, we actually have a full-on in-depth interview. She covers, there's loads. We talk about, what do we talk about? We talk about Brett Sutton. We talk about Dave Scott. We talk about her training out in Switzerland. We talk about
You basically got a whole life story in triathlon and some really good stuff about coaching and some really good stuff about what she's up to now in the future.
Yeah.
And stuff about motherhood and being pregnant and training in the run up to it and being a mum afterwards and training after. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, and lots of listeners sent us questions as well, so we put quite a lot of those questions to Chrissie and she answers them, and we had a really good giggle. So do stay tuned today because it's a great interview.
Do you know, mate, I'm going to give you a Helen's pat on the back for this. You get it, because I listened to it on my long run this morning, so I did my preparation, and I was really impressed by it, mate. It was a good interview, and I've heard a lot of interviews with Chrissie Wellington over the years, and you got some good interviews, man. You're good at this. You should do it for a job or something.
I enjoy talking to her, and hopefully everyone will enjoy the interview and learn a lot from it. And yeah, basically it's good. You will learn stuff. She even talks about Daniela Ryf as well, and would she want to come up against her. I'm not going to give any answers away.
We'll have to talk about that after we've played the interview, won't we, later?
Exactly. So don't fast forward quite yet, because we're going to tell you some results as well from the weekend that's just gone. There was some important duathlon qualifiers, weren't there? And there were 2 Ironman races as well. So we will go through some of that and Coach's Couch. We've got a Coach's Couch question coming up too. And then we'll play the interview out a little bit later.
It's really good. Right, so let's kick it off with some results then from this weekend, because it's nice when this time of year rolls around and the days are starting to get longer, and you know that's happening, especially when races start happening around the world. So let's go over, Helen, to your favourite place, Monterey.
Hey! So yeah, I raced in Monterey last year, and the weather wasn't all that delightful last year. However, this year, I don't think it was that much better actually, Rob. But I don't think it was quite.
Really?
No, I don't think the cobbles. You have to go through over a load of cobbled in the old city centre of Monterey, and it can be a little bit scary. But anyway, clearly, let's start off with 3 in a row for Tim Don, Rob.
Yes, he's making that race his own, isn't he, really?
Absolutely is. He did the fastest run split of the day. And then I think, 4th or 5th sort of fastest swim and bike. So, yeah, he was absolutely up there and then nailed it on the run, basically.
And it's a pretty cool course, because I was looking at photos Stu Hayes put up there, and I hadn't quite got this from, even though we talked about it last year, quite how much of like an outdoor swimming pool the race is. It's like down a great big canal that you can stand up in the whole way.
It's great. So it's a 1.2 metre deep, man-made. It's not even like a canal. It's like a man-made river in a park
It looks like a big outdoor swimming pool, doesn't it?
Seriously, so you're not allowed to swim in it normally. I think.
Oh, that's got to break your heart if you're a local kid, hasn't it? You can't swim here except when everyone else rocks up, and then they can all swim here.
Yeah, totally. I remember last year people were stopping after like 2 minutes to stand up and check that their Garmin's are working. Just like, oh, come on. I didn't spot that. My Rich was out there supporting, and he said I couldn't believe it.
You're allowed to like do standy uppies and dives in. Could you do the whole thing as dolphin dives?
You're not allowed to, but there were 1 or 2 people standing up and probably moving forward. Yeah. But it is. There are some parts of the course which go really, really narrow. Probably you can only get, I'd say, like 2 people wide.
Seriously?
Yeah,
so it's like the width of a swimming lane.
Yeah, but there are other bits which are, a lot wider, and it's fine. And because they set everyone off in waves, it's okay. But it is like swimming in a 1.9 kilometre long swimming pool. It's just the best swim I've ever done, and it's about. I know they were wearing wetsuits this year, but the water's usually about 18 degrees, so it's quite pleasant.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah, so.
Well, there we go then. Tim Don takes it home in 3:42 with a storming 1:12 run. So he's in good shape, and that's a good mark on the board for Team Coca-Cola, isn't it? With them being down in
Team Bravo.
Team Bravo in South America. Trevor Wurtell second in 3:43, and Matt Schrabeau in 3:44. We also had Stewie Hayes there in 13th place in 3:56. So perhaps not quite the result he was hoping for, but early in the season yet, hey?
Exactly. Early in the season. And isn't it one of... I mean, he said when we spoke to him that he had really, really struggled with a lot of injury over the past couple of years, hadn't he? So, yeah.
So just that he's out there running again is really positive, isn't it?
Exactly. So, and he was out there with Team Dillon and Emma Pallant, who was racing in the women's race, and she finished 6th actually, which I think is a
women's results.
Yeah.
We've got Heather Wurtell taking the win in 4:08, so Trevor Wurtell's wife. Camilla Pedersen in 2nd in 4:12, and Miranda Carfrey in 3rd in 4:15. So. Interesting when you see her in the early season, and she's not I don't know whether this is the right thing to say, but she's not the dominant athlete you'd expect her to be year round. It's interesting she gets 7 minutes put into her in a half Ironman at this time of year.
Yeah.
And I know it's early and stuff, but
I think that's the point, isn't it? She has absolutely nailed peaking at the right time for Kona. She probably, she probably doesn't. I'm not saying she doesn't care, because clearly she does. It's her livelihood. It's what she does. But she will know, actually, it doesn't matter if I'm not at my best at this point in the season.
Well, she's just got to validate, hasn't she, to get to Kona anyway.
Yeah.
One of these and a full distance somewhere else.
She'll have a bit to prove this year, because of obviously not racing there last year. She'll want to get some confidence back, I guess. Because she had the accident, didn't she, just before, and didn't race. So, yeah. But I was going to say, Rob, did you see Heather Wurtell's bike split? 2:16, like almost 5 minutes faster than any of the other women.
Lordy.
Yeah, that's
some serious biking, girl.
That is absolutely flying on the bike. And she came off with a 1:22 run as well. So, not too. But Rinny's run, she did a 1:20.
Yeah, well, that's good, but I wonder how much time she put into Miranda Carfrey on the bike.
About 8 minutes.
Ooh.
Yeah. But
it's a long way.
I know. Should mention, so we just mentioned Emma Pallant with 6. Emma Kate Lidbury, she was 8th, and there was one other British athlete racing pro in the women's event, and that was Frankie Sanjano, who was 12th.
Here we go. So that wraps it up for Monterey for this year.
Yep.
Other races around the world were happening over in, is it San Juan? Is that how we pronounce this?
Sí.
San Juan.
Muy bien.
Where is San Juan, Helen?
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. Do you know, many years ago I got offered a job in Puerto Rico.
Did you?
I got offered a job, get this, right, teaching windsurfing. But back in the day when I was a windsurfing instructor, I had a job offer on the table, and I couldn't get the visa to go and do it.
Oh, gutted.
Yeah, it was working at a really swanky hotel as well, and I was like, I'm there for the whole winter.
Oh
I'm
my
working at the
God.
beach. Couldn't get the visa for it.
Gutted. How
Yeah,
would
which
do
is
you
hard.
think you would have ever come back if you had ended up in San Juan in Puerto Rico?
Oh, probably not.
Nah,
No, I'm
nah.
probably there with my burnt, baldy head and great big red burnt nose still to this day.
Just about managing to teach people to windsurf.
I got sunburnt in Landudno this weekend, let alone in Puerto Rico.
Oh, that would have been a
Yeah.
interesting. Anyway, in Puerto Rico, there were people racing a half Ironman and possibly windsurfing as well, but we were interested in the half Ironman. Tim O'Donnell took the win in 3:50 ahead of Leon Griffin of Australia in 3:54. And just about 50 seconds ahead of Cameron Dye in third. Romain Guillaume was fourth out there as well, Rob.
Oh, we like Rowan Guillaume. We desperately want to get him on the show, don't
Yeah.
we? He was ace when we met him it's nearly a year ago now since 70.3 Staffordshire. I got to drop him another email and see if we can get him on the show.
Try it.
He apparently went guts all glory on the bike, and he was up there with the leaders coming off the bike, and just kind of faded away. There was a pack of them chasing down Starkowitz, who put a 2:01 bike split together, believe it or not.
Flying.
Yeah. Tell you who else was racing, who doesn't even really appear in the results there, was Luke Van Leerd.
Oh, was he?
Who I read his blog earlier on because I was wondering what on earth happened to him, and apparently he lost a minute in transition. He was third out the water, and whether he couldn't do a zip up or something, I don't know, but he lost a minute in transition, missed the pack, and basically rode solo the whole way, a minute behind everyone.
Yeah.
And then just kind of it didn't happen for him on the run.
Gutted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
I'd love to have seen a film of this, because you can just imagine, can't you, if you've got Romain Guillaume coming off the bike with a pack of 3 or 4 of them just trying to kill each other. He's a really gutsy racer.
Yeah.
He did it at was it Ironman France last year?
Yeah.
And he just went like sub 6 minute mile pace out of transition. He's just a rock star. And one of these days he's going to get away with it.
Yes, hopefully.
He is, and I could see him winning a big race, he's a quality athlete.
I think he will. I think time will he'll get that race, and it'll all happen for him.
Stop riding his bike into a swimming pool. That'll help his bearings.
In the women's, Rob, Tina Deckers of Belgium got the win, and again another flying bike. She did 2:15 on the bike, so again sort of 5 minutes clear. So she finished first in 4:20 ahead of Sarah Haskins of the US, 25-minute swim, and then Lindsay Corbin, who again we've said is on the comeback this year after injury for a lot of last year. She finished third in 4:23.
Fantastic race in there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, we're seeing a lot of very fast bike splits, aren't we?
Yes. Yep.
The days when the boys could roll up and ride 2:10 or 2:12,
Not happening.
and the ladies would be riding in the 2:20s. The last couple of seasons, things have moved on.
Yeah.
It's now like you see a 2:01 bike split, and you kind of shrug your shoulders a little bit and go,
Yeah.
"Oh well, another fast bike split."
Exactly. Oh, I love it, Rob.
I do, and I think it's got to be this year. We're looking for the sub 4 bike split at Ironman from one of the pros. Someone's gonna. I don't know if you'll remember this. A few years ago, there was a super duper swimmer, and his name has now escaped me. But he started the Sailfish wetsuit brand.
Yep.
Can't remember his name for the life of me.
You clearly can't.
Anyway, he basically went out to Ironman Germany to break the world record in the Ironman swim, and set some scorchio like low 40s swim time.
Yeah.
And basically then just he completed the race, but he was done in after it. I think someone's going to do that on the bike this year, and it's going to be a proper. We are trying to go under the 4-hour barrier.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely at Roth or Germany or somewhere fast this year. It's going to happen.
Was it someone called Jan?
Yes, Jan Stevenson.
Yes, Jan Sibbers.
Right?
Yeah. Former professional swimmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a 42:17 at the 2004 Ironman in Germany. Woo.
There we go. Hey, good research, Helen.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
fast on the old fast fingers there.
Very, very fast fingers.
Fast fingers, Murray.
Oh, I know. Rob, so back home in the UK, we had the Columba Park Triathlon, didn't we?
Talk about from the ridiculous to the sublime.
Yeah.
Moving all the way from Puerto Rico to
Clumber Park.
Clumber Park in Nottinghamshire. But, well, here's someone who could put a sub 4-hour bike split together. Matt Bottrell.
Age group athlete of the week.
We've got to give it to him, haven't we?
Yes.
I mean, I know he's an ex-super-duper biker and all of that, but still, this guy is raising the game for like non-pro biking this year, isn't he? In the age group ranks. Have you got the spreadsheet open that says what time he did?
There it is. He did 53:13, which is mental.
53:13, which puts him.
It was like 4.5 minutes ahead of anyone else.
5 minutes ahead of the next fastest person, and there's only a couple of guys went under 60 minutes. So it was one of them's Ian Roberts, actually. Good work, Ian.
Oh, nice one.
Used to race Ian back in the day. Obviously, when I say race him, I used to be quite a long way behind Ian back in the day. But
you're on the same start line as him.
We were on the same start line
as
him. Yeah, he's a good lad. He was on the coach education course I ran a few weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
Quality, good race from him in 5th. But yeah, 53 minutes, man. And then what's he run off the bike here? 20 minutes for his 5K at the finish.
Yeah.
But everyone else is running, 17 and a half, won it.
Yeah.
19. So he's not a million miles away from
Not
the
at
real.
all.
Ian's a really good runner. Ian's put a 19-minute second run together there. So it's not a short, fast run course, that. So
No, and
chapeau, Matt Bottrell.
Absolutely. So Matt Bottrell was second. We should say Richard Shepherd of Stratford-upon-Avon took the win in 1:53. Yeah, Matt Bottrell of Team Bottrell 1:55, and then David Thomas finished kind of not quite a minute after Bottrell in 3rd. Over in the women's, this is for the standard. Claire Steels took the win. Absolutely smashed it, Rob. Did 2:06.
Very good.
Ahead of Kate Morris in 2:11, and then Angela Hannon of Wakefield Tri in 2:16. So yeah, real comfortable win there for Claire Steels, who I think she got gold at the World Championships in Adelaide last year. So
good knowledge.
yeah,
Good knowledge. Very impressive.
Fantastic. In the shall I just give the sprint results as well quickly?
Yeah, do it.
So Matthew Nelson took the win in 55:39. Peter Ellis of RAF Tri was second in 56:18, ahead of Sebastian Gary, 56:28. And then over on the women, the win was taken by Becky Tipping of Brat Triathlon, 1:05. Fiona Kesteven was second in 1:06, and Sarah Kerr, 3rd, just 6 seconds after.
Oh, a bit of a sprint finish there.
Sprint finish, took her on the line.
Good work.
So,
So there'll be qualifiers there. There won't be official qualifiers for the World and/or European Championships. So there we go for our international listeners. That's the Great British qualification system at work there for you all.
Yeah. Yeah. Google Clumber Park Triathlon and that you'll find out loads more about it.
It's kind of mad to think we've got all these listeners in America and Australia and stuff who are listening to the results of the Clumber Park Duathlon for the Great Britain age group team qualifiers. I quite like we've retained our local feel.
Yes,
that's good.
Definitely. So
a bit of local Britishness there for you all.
Well, exactly. Still to come, we do have this interview with Chrissie Wellington, which we will be playing out shortly. First, before we do that, Rob, shall we do Coach's Couch?
Let's do Coach's Couch. You've had a question this week, haven't we, regarding racing over Olympic distance and what equipment to use?
That's it. So Karen Halliwell has got in touch, and she says that she's doing her first Olympic triathlon, and she asks, do I need tri bars and tri shoes and like all the kit, and do I need to learn how to do a flying mount?
Oh, it's a cracking question. I think a lot of people have this going through their minds. A bit of background about Karen when she wrote through. She's basically done one sprint before last year. She's in her mid-40s, so she's getting into triathlon kind of a little bit later in life, and her bike handling is the thing that scares her the most about it. So she enjoys swimming. She's a good runner. The bike handling's the scary part. So a bit of general advice I would give is that tri bars are the one thing, the investment you can make that'll probably give you the most bang for your buck. But the caveat is that it's only going to do that if you're comfortable riding your bike in the aero position. And in order to become comfortable riding in the aero position, you've got to train in that position and practice your bike handling. Now, it isn't particularly hard or difficult to pick up those skills. It's just a matter of spending some time out riding in the aero position itself. But part of the key to this is you've got to accept that you've got to be comfortable riding in these bars in order to get the benefit of them. And if you're not, and especially if the worst happens and you end up having a crash because of it, they're certainly not going to help you out. So my advice is, yeah, it's going to help you, but you've got to spend some time in the run up to the race training on them as well. In terms of, do you need tri-specific bike shoes? Well, no, you don't. You can just use your normal bike shoes, especially if it's your first Olympic distance. And with regard to like doing a flying mount or not, we're getting into the realms now of this saving you a handful of seconds at each end of your transition. And it's only going to do that if the flying mount actually goes well, which you've only got to spend a little bit of time around the transition to see that about half the time these flying mounts don't go well for people who are, I mean, even pros
look on YouTube and there are a few videos of flying mounts not going to plan.
It's a high risk, low reward strategy, isn't it, for time saving? So you've got the benefit, you're not running through transition in your bike shoes and smashing your cleats up. But again, it comes with this caveat that you've got to practice a lot to make it worthwhile. And if you're getting to the point where you're competitive in your age group and you're missing or winning age groups by a handful of seconds, like our mate Warren Mason, who managed to take the male 50 at Clumber Park this weekend by a handful of seconds after missing it by a handful of seconds last time. You know, your transitions can be vital, but if it's your first Olympic and you just kind of want to get around safely, then put safety as your first priority and just take a few more seconds to make sure you mount safely, you get on safely, you ride away safely, and you know, maybe try and avoid someone who is trying a flying mount for the first time. Get yourself over to the side of the road, and just look after yourself there a little bit. So by no means essential, but definitely in the case of tri-bars, they will help you out. And you're looking at probably a saving of, I'd say, a minute over 40 kilometres just by virtue of being in that aero position once you're used to it and have trained in it.
Rob, you'll be pleased to know the first 70.3 I did, I didn't have tri-bars, just did it on my road bike. And yeah, when I realised that actually, tri-bars might help. My goodness, they really did. But one thing I would say is I've since had like a proper bike fit and things like that, and he said these tri-bars aren't great at all because they're too big for you. So yeah. I would just say make sure that they fit you properly, or else again you aren't going to be comfortable, and you never know, it could do a little bit of an injury if you're not on that bike positioned very well.
Yeah,
so
yeah. All the caveats about going and seeing a decent bike fitter, and a decent rule of thumb is if you're adding tri-bars onto a road bike, most of the tri-bars that are sold are kind of aftermarket tri-bars aimed at triathlon bikes or TT bikes, so they tend to be really, really long. In terms of, they'll put you in a really stretched out position. Now, if you look at Olympic distance races, a lot of them are using these kind of shorty tri-bars, and they'll still help you get into an aerodynamic position on a road bike, but they won't put you in that really, you know, you see a lot of those guys in the kind of Chris Boardman stretched out Superman position almost, because, you know, just by virtue of trying to get your forearms over the bars on a road bike, it can really stretch you out. And perhaps not so much of a big deal over the Olympic distance, but certainly going any longer than that, you're going to get pretty uncomfortable and put a lot of strain on your lower back. So it's good advice there, Hells. I think making sure you've got the appropriate tri-bars as well is a good thing.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Karen, very much for your question. So that was Karen Halliwell for Coach's Couch. And don't forget, if you have a question for Coach's Couch, then you can get in touch with us. We're at Cup of Tri on Twitter. Or Rob, what's your email address?
It's coachrobwilby@oxygenaddict.com. And I tell you what, if you're feeling a little bit lively, there's a button on our website you can click and leave us a voice message and actually ask your question, and we'll play it on air.
Do it. It's really easy. It's really
it's
easy.
So good. It's a really nifty little bit of code we put in the website. Click the button, speak into your computer. It comes straight through to us as a voicemail message. I'm starting to sense people don't really want to hear their own voices on here, Hells.
It's bad enough, you and I blabbering on.
Yeah, I know how they feel. I don't want to hear my voice on it either.
No, but we do love hearing from you, genuinely. So please do get in touch. As we said, you can email, tweet us at Cup of Try, and or you can send us a voice message via the website oxygenaddict.com.
Right. Hells, it's time for people to hear a bit more of your voice, because we're taking people over for the interview of the week with Chrissie Wellington, sponsored by the wonderful raceforce.co.uk. So we're going to give a little plug to them before we play the interview, because they are cool company. If you're taking your bike abroad, you're going to pay a lot of money to take it on the plane. You're going to have to borrow or buy a bike box. It's a lot of hassle. You're going to pay 60 to 100 quid on the plane. And let's be honest, it's never really handled that kindly in the airport from what I've seen, Hells, is it?
No, really not. So check out raceforce.co.uk, because they actually look after your bike really, really nicely. They have some big shiny buses to pick up the bikes and transport them to your race.
The bike gets better love than you do on EasyJet, that's for sure.
Gets more space.
Picked up from your house if you want it to. And listeners to Cup of Try get a discount if you use the discount code COT10. You get 10% off all of their services apart from Bike Bus Standard. And with that, Helen, we're going to go over to the wonderful Chrissie Wellington.
Chrissie Wellington, welcome to the Cup of Try Triathlon podcast.
It's an honour.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you on.
No, thank you. I've been following and listening with interest, so it's great to be featured.
Oh, thank you. Well, we've had lots of questions from our listeners, so we will come to them a little bit later on in the interview. The one thing I wanted to kick off by finding out was, you've been a couple of years retired now, and when you sort of sit back and you look back at your triathlon career, does it ever feel a bit like it was all a dream?
I think when I go out for a run now and I'm struggling to run an hour, and I reflect back on the times where I could, run 2.5 hours quite comfortably, it does feel very, very surreal. It was an amazing part of my life. It was always going to be that. It was always going to be part of a really rich life, never the entirety. But looking back, I'm proud of what I've achieved. I enjoyed every single minute, but it does feel slightly distant to me now, I have to admit.
But not in a bad way.
Definitely not in a bad way. Absolutely. I have no regrets. I don't regret anything with regards to training and racing, and I also don't regret retiring and moving on from the sport.
So take us back to that first day when you had packed up all your belongings and everything like that in the UK, and you were heading out to this guy Brett Sutton. What was that like?
Exciting, scary, daunting, in equal measure. I'd given up my job essentially as a civil servant. As most people know, I was working as a policy advisor to the government on international development policy, and I lived in London, lived with friends in Clapham, and as you said, packed up all of my belongings into my parents' car and then into my parents' house, and essentially moved with a bike box and a small bag to Switzerland. It was a really daunting time. I think taking a risk is always scary, and taking a leap into the unknown is always challenging, no matter who you are and no matter what your background is or what you're going to. And for me, it was a leap of faith. It was a step into the unknown, because I hadn't really grown up ever aspiring to be a professional triathlete, let alone an Ironman world champion. So it really wasn't part of the life journey I'd envisaged for myself. I knew very little about the sport. Although I was world age group champion at that point, I really hadn't followed the sport. I wasn't a historian of the sport. I didn't know that much about the sport. I'd only just really found out about Ironman. So that part of it was incredibly daunting. I didn't know any of the names. I didn't know any of the personalities, including those in Brett's team. So whilst that was an advantage, as I didn't defer to anyone, it also meant that I was training amongst essentially a bunch of strangers, which is always scary, no matter how kind of friendly and outgoing you are. But I was excited too, Helen. It was a really exciting time. It was a huge opportunity for me, an opportunity to try and be the best that I could be. But at that point, it was only ever with an Olympic distance focus. Ironman was for stupid, crazy people and not for me. So I went there hoping to be able to qualify for the Beijing Olympics, never once with an eye on doing an Ironman, let alone going to Kona.
So when he said, Chrissie, I don't think the Olympic distance is for you, I think you'd be better going longer, like, were you just thinking, what?
I think I also came to the realization that my swim would take a lot more work to get it up to the standard that I needed to. I simply wasn't a strong enough swimmer, and technically I wasn't a competent enough biker. I'm a good, strong power cyclist, and that's why Ironman appeals to me, because you're cycling on your own and it's very much, a power, strength, endurance effort. Whereas for Olympic distance, you have to be skilled on the bike. You have to be able to ride in a pack, and you have to be able to do that kind of yo-yo pacing, which wasn't really my forte. The run, I think I could have held my own, especially with some more targeted training. But it was my weakness in the swim and my lack of competence on the bike, including keeping it upright, that meant that really the Olympic distance wasn't for me. I think I could have raced at that distance, but I really couldn't have achieved at the highest level. So I think there was a tacit acknowledgement between Brett and I that Ironman was in my future, especially when you have the opportunity to train with athletes who at that time were at the top of the Ironman game: Belinda Granger, Hilary Biscay, and then Bella Colmerford, now Bella Bayliss, and others. I was able to measure myself against those and realize actually I could hold my own, and could challenge them for positions on the podium at certain races. So that gave me confidence that I could achieve, although I have to admit the Ironman was something that was still incredibly scary, and it's almost seemed inconceivable that people could run such fast marathons off the back of swimming and biking. And it wasn't until I had the opportunity to put it together I realised actually it is possible.
I want to ask, how is it possible? Like, what does it take to get it to that point where it is possible to run like a 2:48 off the bike?
I think it's a mixture of nature and nurture. And many people have asked, what's the balance between those? I think I was born with an innate talent for endurance. I have the physiology that means I'm able to do that, the biomechanics, especially. I'm also incredibly glycogen efficient, which helps when you're competing at a longer endurance event, especially. But it was also the training that I was doing. I had the ability to withstand training, not necessarily high volume training, and definitely not as high volume as some of the other athletes that Brett had, but I had the ability to what we call back up day after day after day after day, being able to do a lot of hard training. I was quite resilient in that respect. So that really did help. But essentially I was born with, I think, that the physiology that when honed enabled me to perform to that, I guess, at the highest level at Ironman. But physiology and physical prowess is only part of the jigsaw. And I know you understand this, and many listeners understand this, but it's the psychology that matters. It really, really does. Having trained, with Brett's athletes, and then trained in Boulder amongst some of the best in the world, I know that a lot of us are doing very similar training, and it's the psychology and the mental strength that can set athletes apart, and that's something that also needs to be developed. It's not something that necessarily comes naturally, and we need to invest as much time in training our brain as we do our bodies. And athletes would do well at all levels, would do well to do that, to ensure that when adversity strikes, when the proverbial hits the fan, because it will in training and racing, you're able to withstand that, and you have tools in your toolbox to be able to overcome those down times and those difficult moments.
Did you ever work with a sports psychologist, or how did you work on your mental strength?
I didn't work with a sports psychologist, not one that was a sports psychologist by training, but I would credit both of the coaches that I had, both Brett and Dave, with being powerhouses in sports psychology. They're experts in their field, and it's not simply because they know how to put a training program together. It's not simply putting the swim, bike and run, jigsaw pieces in place. They knew me. They could understand me. They knew how to flick my switch, as it were. They knew how to manage me. They knew how to get me motivated. They knew how to calm me down. They knew how to encourage me, and they knew how to give me a boost when I needed it. And so, without having ever worked with, a sports psychologist by training, I do think I've worked with the best in the world in terms of them bringing out the best of me mentally as well as physically.
And would it be sometimes something as simple as a subtle comment here and there, peppered throughout your training week, which would have worked on that mental strength from them?
Yeah, and it wasn't just comments. It was the training they gave me as well. Because you gain great strength from doing things that you think you can't. So both of those coaches would set sessions for me that I'd look at them aghast and say, you have to be joking if you think I'm going to be doing that.
And can you give an example of one of those sort of sessions?
There was a day in Lausanne when we were in Switzerland with Brett, and we did 100 100s in the swimming pool. So that's 10K in the swimming pool. That was Hilary Biscay's birthday present that she'd asked for. She's even more of a masochist than me. But it was 100 100, so 10K in the swimming pool. Then we were allowed breakfast, so we went home and I probably ate my body weight in food. And then we had 2-hour bike ride with an hour of hill repeats, so going up and down this kind of 10-minute hill in Lausanne with Brett and his baggy tracksuit bottoms and Ugg boots standing by the side of the road barking at you. And then you could go back, you could have a bit more food, and then we'd head down the mountain. So Lausanne is up at altitude, so we'd go down the valley 16K, and we had a 40K time trial, but of course you have to climb the 16K back up again. So that was another 2-hour ride. So that day was a 10K swim and 2-hour rides. And when when I was presented with that day, I just thought, there's no way I'm going to get through this, and I did, and actually I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a surprise to your listeners, but really enjoyed it. And you realise actually I can get through things that I didn't think I could, or it might be as simple as a treadmill set that Dave would set me with a mixture of intervals and hill repeats, and I'd look at it and I think, I'm not going to be running 17K an hour, but yet you can. And it's pushing through those times that I think gave me psychological strength. But of course, just going back to your original question, it was the subtle comments. It's what they did say, and it's what they didn't say. For example, Brett forcing me to do races when I was exhausted or tired, or I thought I was ill prepared, and I'd do them and I'd succeed, and that would give me confidence. Or going into 2011 when I was battered from the bike crash, Dave never once voiced any concerns, and I know he had them. We've spoken since, and he's expressed that he thought I might not even make the start line, let alone finish the race, let alone win it. But he never once expressed those concerns to me. So in that way, he was able to give me inner confidence. So there's a variety of techniques that coaches can use to enable you to develop strength. But ultimately, it comes from within. It comes from you pushing yourself and pushing your limits and testing yourself, so that when the going gets tough, you recollect those difficult times, and you know that things are possible. And it's having a mantra, and it's having, it's visualizing past races or family or plates of chips or whatever you want to have at the end. So it's all of these different tools rolled into one, I think, gives you the mental strength that you need to succeed.
It's fascinating. You know, that set that you just described, that training day, would Brett have come to you in the morning and said, this is what's happening today, or would you have got it the night before, or did he give you bit by bit? You said, right, we're going to go and do the 10K swim, and then you didn't know what was next?
We had a structure, a loose structure. So I'd always know that Sunday was a long run day. I'd know that Monday was a swim and a bike, for example. Tuesday was a run day, run intervals. So the weeks followed a similar structure. I did know the day before that we were going to be given a 10K swim. And as Thursday was always a double bike day, I knew that we would be doing the hills followed by the time trial. But both of my coaches also had the habit of changing the schedule, throwing something in just to keep you on your toes as well. So I did know the night before about the 10K swim. I don't know if that helped or hindered, actually, because you go to bed thinking,
worrying about it,
dreaming about it. But thinking back to those double bike days, I mean, it sounds torturous, it sounds masochistic, but there is a method in the madness, because if you do hill repeats in the morning, your legs are tired. It's a strength workout, power workout. So it fatigues your legs. And then if you have to go then and do a time trial after that with a little break, it replicates what's happening in a race, because your legs are tired, but yet, towards the end, you're still having to time trial. So I think it's sessions like that help to replicate a race and help to make you stronger and more resilient.
You've mentioned both Brett Sutton and Dave Scott, so they were the two coaches that you worked with as a professional. What were the main differences between them?
They were very, very different, both in terms of the training they gave me and in terms of their own approach and their own character. And I think at the different stages of my career, both were equally effectual. I came to Brett as a novice. I was totally green, very ignorant, very gung ho, and he is very authoritarian. You follow an order. So if he told me to push a peanut around the floor with my nose, I'd push a peanut around the floor with my nose. You have to learn to follow the order. And I resisted it, and we bashed heads, and the relationship wasn't working. And it was only when I allowed him in, and I allowed him to take control and relieved myself of the burden of making decisions, that it really started to work. And Brett is also the one that taught me to rest. He taught me to rest my mind as well as my body. I could work as hard as anyone, but I couldn't rest my mind and I couldn't rest my body. And he knew that he had to force me to do that if I was going to achieve my potential. But it was a very top-down relationship. There was no room for discussion, no room for negotiation. Whereas with Dave, it was a lot more of a friendship. It was very reciprocal. We'd sit down, we'd discuss my goals and my race, my race plans and what I thought I could bring to the table in terms of what I'd done previously. And it was a lot more of a discursive reciprocal relationship, I'd say. And I think at that point in my career, I wanted that. I wanted to be able to ask why. I wanted to know the answers to the questions, and I wanted to have a hand in my program. Whilst he had the ultimate say, I did want to be able to understand the minutiae and to be able to change things if we saw fit. So those were the main differences, really, and there's no right or wrong approach. And I think as athletes change and evolve, whether amateur or professional, you have to acknowledge that different coaches can be right at different times, and some coaches aren't right at all. I had a brief spell with Simon Lessing, wonderful athlete, but as a coach, he didn't work for me, but he may work for other people. And I think you have to be mature enough as an athlete to say, look, either the coaching relationship has run its course, or this coach actually isn't right for me at all. And that's not a reflection of that coach necessarily, and it's not a reflection of you, but it's the same with any relationship. Some work and some don't. And I was fortunate in my career to have two coaches that at different times enabled me to really succeed and brought out the best in me.
Do you think if you hadn't gone to Brett Sutton when you did, do you think you would have been as successful in the sport? No,
categorically not.
Yeah.
Because everyone, I think other coaches, even Dave included, would have waited. She's a novice. She shouldn't be doing an Ironman in the first year. She definitely shouldn't go to Kona. She needs to go through that rite of passage. Oh, she definitely shouldn't do Kona 6 weeks after only doing her first Ironman. And he threw caution to the wind. He's, obviously very controversial for reasons that most people know, and he doesn't necessarily do things by the book. And I was impatient. I was keen to achieve as much as I could in the shortest period of time, and he knew that, and he managed that, and he got the very, very best out of me as early as we possibly could. And I think another coach may not have been as brave, potentially, if I could call it brave, as he is, or maybe arrogant or confident is a better way of putting it. But no, he believed in me long before I believed in me, and I definitely don't think that I would have won Hawaii in 2007 or even 2008 under another coach.
He also seems to be working wonders with Daniela Ryf.
Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal athlete. Olympic distance, I think she was 7th at the Olympics as her highest placing, but now a half Ironman and then Ironman, she's probably one of the, or if not the most well-rounded and increasingly decorated athlete that has graced triathlon, and it's an absolute privilege to watch her race.
I know you've said you have no regrets at all about retiring when you did. Is there a tiny little bit of you that would like to have raced her? Let's say she was a couple of years older, you were a couple of years younger.
Oh, you always want to race the best in the world. You can only race the people that are there on the day. And when I was racing, some of those athletes that, are still on the global stage, but they were the best in the world. And they pushed me every single step of the way. But there is part of me that would love to race Daniela. And whilst she's an absolutely phenomenal athlete, there's room for improvement. Absolutely. Her run can be a lot faster. I don't know if she has broken 3 hours yet. I'm not following, the minutiae of her results, but she there is definitely room for improvement. And I'd like to think that whilst she'd probably or definitely take me on the swim, and maybe even have a little bit of a lead on the bike, I'd like to think that I could mow her down over the course of a marathon. But unfortunately, we're never gonna see that happen, and I'll have to admire and watch her from afar. And I definitely think she's got a long career ahead of her, and there is, like I said, definitely scope for improvement. So I don't think we've seen the best of her yet.
the way she came on the scene at Kona a couple of years ago was pretty impressive. A bit like the way that you had come on the scene back in 2007 in Kona and sort of blew everyone away.
She's an incredibly impressive athlete with many, many strings to her bow. And what's great about it is that she's consistent across all three disciplines. Whilst there is room for improvement, definitely on her run, especially, that she's a phenomenal athlete, and she's going to be tough to beat. Definitely going to be tough to beat this year. But she's not the only athlete, vying for that top spot. Of course, Rinny's going to come back with the bit between her teeth, especially after what happened last year. And of course, we've got Rachel, we've got other British athletes that are coming up and challenging for those podiums. Melissa is now fit and hopefully healthy, so she'll definitely be vying for the top spot. Angela Nath, again, a phenomenal athlete, didn't perform well at Kona last year due to an injury, but she's a phenomenal bike runner, so will definitely be there. And of course you've got Jodie and Caroline Steffen, whose careers just keeps on going. So there are definitely athletes to watch, and there's strength and depth in the women's field, and it's really, really exciting, and just as exciting as the men's, if not more, to watch.
Talking of men's and women's fields, where do you stand on the start numbers for the World Championships?
I believe that those numbers should be equal. I believe that there should be the opportunity for as many women to race as men. I don't believe we need to earn the right to have as many slots as men. And I think that if there is opportunity, it will breed further strength and depth in the women's field. And the stats are showing that the women have to race more to gain a chance to compete at Kona, which on the one hand is great if you love racing, but you also have to acknowledge that there's that increased risk of injury, and also the fact that travel, accommodation, the cost of racing, it is quite high, and that's going to eat into the meager salaries that the women can earn. But having said that, and I appreciate the controversy around the number of slots, and I am firmly supportive of what they're trying to achieve in terms of getting equal slots. But we do have to recognise that our sport is extremely progressive in terms of gender equality. There is room for improvement, of course there is. But if we look at other sports and then look at triathlon, it really is more of a shining light in terms of encouraging women to take part. The women and the men race on the same course, on the same day, for the same amount of prize money as the men, and that can't be said for many other sports, especially cycling. And I believe that the women have as much media coverage and as many commercial opportunities, especially at the top end, as their male counterparts. So there really is things to celebrate with regards to triathlon, but we can't rest on our laurels. And I do think that the WTC and the new owners, Wanda, really need to take a careful look at the slot allocation and do the right thing, and realise that if they are to further encourage women across the amateur level and the professional level to take part in the sport, then they need to increase the number of slots to make it equal to men, and give women the same opportunities that the males do to compete on those hallowed lava fields.
Do you ever worry about the future of your sport, especially like the longer distance Ironman?
I don't worry about the future. I think that there are obvious concerns that surround many sports, not least the doping controversies that we're seeing obviously in cycling, more recently in athletics and tennis and triathlon. Long distance triathlon and short distance triathlon isn't immune to that. We've had positive tests, and it shows that doping is whilst not prevalent, it is there, both within the professional ranks, but also, unfortunately, within the amateur ranks as well, which shows that it isn't simply money that is motivating people to cheat. So that's an obvious concern, and we need to be proactive. Those at the very top need to be proactive in terms of tackling this and investing money in making sure that the athletes have the information that they need to be able to make informed decisions about what they can and can't take. We need a really rigorous testing program that isn't just urine, that is blood and includes blood passports, out of competition as much as in competition, and test not those just at the top, but also those that are up and coming, and unfortunately also those age group athletes too, because there have been positive tests amongst the amateurs. But that also needs to be funded, and there needs to be a situation whereby our sport is properly funded in order to be able to pay for that rigorous testing that needs to be undertaken. And perhaps that can come from sponsorship money. You know, if sponsors of all of the Ironman or the challenge races all, you know, said, look, we'll put in 5% into a testing pot, I think it would benefit us all, because it's not just the athletes and the sports that pay the price. We've seen that the sponsors also pay the price of the positive tests that the athletes have incurred. So they do well also to look at whether they can contribute to paying for what's needed in terms of more stringent, rigorous doping. But in terms of the general future of the sport, I don't worry about it. I think it's growing incrementally year on year at all levels, with professional levels, strength and depth in the professional ranks, but also, you know, at the amateur level, we're seeing such a wide range of people that are taking up the sport across all distances, and that's really phenomenal. I do worry about monopolies in any industry, so I like to see local race organisers still being able to put on successful races without being bought out by major corporations. So I think we need to do what we can to support our local races, our club events, our local national race organisers, as much as we do paying for that M. Tattoo that you might get if you finish an Ironman, because there are some phenomenal races that are organised by other companies that are really worthy of our patronage. My favourite race is Challenge Roth. It's obviously not a World Triathlon Corporation event, but it's, to me, the best race in the world bar none. And I hope that companies such as Challenge and other smaller companies are able to still compete in the marketplace as Ironman, you know, spreads its tentacles still further.
I was going to ask you that question about your favourite race, so you've answered that one. Thank you very much. But
it's one long rambling answer.
You did touch on it just there, about more of the grassroots end of the sport. You're obviously heavily involved in Parkrun, which has been a huge success. Do you think that triathlon could do something similar, almost up its game at the grassroots level to encourage more people into it?
I do think triathlon does very well at the grassroots level. I can only really speak of this country, of which I've got the most exposure to, but we have about 600 clubs in this small island, 600 triathlon clubs that are focusing on bringing people from the grassroots into the sport. Of course, there are elite level amateurs in those clubs, but fundamentally they are bringing people in that have never done triathlon before and giving them that kind of cocoon of support that they need. So I think at the grassroots level, triathlon does does very, very well. But it's still quite an intimidating sport for those that have never done sport before. And that's why I think we need to encourage kind of the, I guess, multidisciplinary formats, but not necessarily in the swim, bike and run structure. So we have swim runs, we have obviously duathlon, the bike runs, but I think we do need more relays, because then people that can swim can just do one leg but can get exposure to the triathlon environment. People that are injured could potentially do a bike if they can't run. So I think the relay format is really exciting. There are a lot of sprint races in this country, which is great, again, for encouraging people that potentially don't necessarily want to do the longer endurance events, but definitely encouraging more multidisciplinary or multi-formatted multi-sport events would be great for encouraging more people. It's obviously an expensive sport as well, and we can't shy away from that. However cheap you try to make it, you still need more than a pair of trainers and a swimming costume and a pair of goggles. So it isn't a cheap sport, and not without its faff. So we can do more, I think, to break down some of the barriers that need to the barriers that exist, especially financial barriers, renting wetsuits, borrowing wetsuits, renting bikes, or even just in terms of marketing, making sure that people realize that they don't need a £5,000 bike to be able to compete, that you can perform very well, like I did on a third hand road bike. So it's also important to reach out to those people and send the right messages about our sport, and that's where podcasts like this can come in, making it accessible, but also magazines can try and convey the message that the barriers that exist can be broken down.
Definitely. Thank you, Chrissie. I'm going to throw in now some listener questions. So Chris Mellier sent us a question asking, what are your plans for the future in sport?
Oh, wow, where do I start? I've been so fortunate. I've got such a fantastic platform since I became a professional athlete to combine my two passions, which are kind of development, international development, and sport. So since I retired, I've been working in the sport development arena. So I helped to establish junior park run in this country, and now work as head of participation for park run, although obviously on maternity leave at the moment. So working for them has been a fantastic opportunity to really encourage sports participation or physical activity participation at the grassroots level. I've also been doing a lot of lobbying and advocacy on sports policy, physical activity policy with the government. So in terms of my professional life, very much still focused on sport and on physical activity, but a lot more at the grassroots level rather than at the professional level. In terms of my athletic endeavours, when I first retired, I got involved in so many different madcap endurance events, whether they were kind of multi-day challenges where we ran up mountains and cycled between them, or sportifs in France. I did quite a few off-road run races, which were absolutely fantastic. So I just really enjoyed being fit, being active, still training each day, but without necessarily having a structure, but being strong enough and fit enough to be able to throw myself into those type of things. And then Tom and I conceived our daughter, and so sport took a back seat for a lot of last year. Although very importantly, I still remained fit and active. So I did something most days. I was swimming, biking, and running right up until the end, really. Well, I stopped biking maybe 6 weeks before. I ran up to 10 days before giving birth, and then swam the day that Esme was born. So I still remain fit and active, and also Pilates was an absolute saviour in terms of giving me that structural and functional strength that I needed to endure the pregnancy and the labour, and also to recover afterwards. But since giving birth to our beautiful daughter 12 or 13 weeks ago now.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Doctors and midwives' orders didn't do any exercise really until 6 weeks after her birth. I did get my Nordic walking poles out and was power walking. That was allowed. I was allowed to do that. But I started running at 6 weeks, and I'm really glad I did wait. It was very important for me to do that, not least to bond with our daughter, but also to enable myself to recover as best as I possibly could. And then started off very, very slowly, very, very steadily, and built it up. We did a 10-mile.
We did. That was where we did our little post-race interview at the finish line.
Absolutely. A Western Supermare. Fantastic race. The 2 Bay Tough 10, which was probably tougher than I'd expected.
It was so hard.
Fitness or the course or both. But really, really great event, and nice to just be part of a small local club, club run, competitive but not too serious event. So that was great. And off the back of that, I decided, I'd like to run Bath Half Marathon. So thanks to one of my sponsors, Brooks, I managed to wangle myself a place at Bath Half Marathon.
And how did that go?
That was a blessing or a curse, but that happened on Sunday. It was a beautiful day for it. I just wanted to do around 1:30, and was really, really happy to run slightly faster. So that was fantastic. It's such a privilege to be able to run and race when, obviously you've got a different focus and a different priority in your life. And Tom was there with Esme, and they were spectating, but it just made me, relish and appreciate the opportunity that I had to run, but also really, really enjoy getting to that finish line and seeing them there. It made it very, very special. So I'd like to continue the running. It's probably the most practical when you've got a small child to care for, and she obviously takes priority. So it is the running that I'm focusing on the most. I'd like to do a bit of off-road running, potentially, step up to a marathon at some point, but I've really got to see, how much time I have and how it plays out in terms of our lifestyle and the other priorities that I have. But as a family, we're obviously wanting to still be active. Tom is, still, training and entering different things, and we want our daughter to grow up seeing us being fit and active and healthy, and for that to be normalized. That's really, really important to us. So it's just a question of balancing it and making sure that while she's the priority, we don't forget what, the other things that make us happy.
Fantastic. Chrissie, Alicia Chase sent us a question saying, what's one thing you would have done more and one thing you would have done less while training and racing?
Oh, Lord, that's a difficult one, isn't it? What would I have done? I've done less. I'd worry less.
Are you a worrier? I'm a worrier.
A bit of a worrier. Yeah. It sounds paradoxical, but I was always riddled with self-doubt. And yet you think you've got to, firmly believe that you can be a champion to be a champion. But I think it was the doubt and the fear that compelled me more. So I think I'd worry less and be more confident, because worrying wastes, precious energy and mental space. So I think I'd worry less. What would I do more of? I I trained a lot on my own, and that has its advantages because you have a very specific program, and it's very important that you follow that program and you don't adapt it to suit others. But I think in hindsight, potentially there were opportunities where I could have trained more with others, especially on the bike. And that would probably be something I'd do more of, but hopefully without needing to adapt or change my program in any way, which, like I said, is very, very important. So I think I'd do more of training with others if I was to turn the clock back.
Beth has got in touch. She says, I'd love to know if there are any tricks to sleeping the night before a race like an Ironman. She says, I think I got about 4 hours tops.
Oh, Beth, you did well to get 4 hours.
Did you sleep? Did you used to sleep well?
No, nobody does. You have to try and bank your sleep in the weeks before the race, which isn't always easy. I appreciate, especially for amateur athletes that have got other obligations and worries and things in their lives. But don't ever expect to sleep the night before the race. Your body is, full of adrenaline. Adrenaline is kind of coursing through your veins, and you're worried, you're nervous, you're thinking about what the next day will bring, or what you've packed, or what you might have forgotten, or the training that you've done or haven't done. And nobody sleeps well the day before the race. So kind of alleviate and release yourself of that stress. The most important thing is to rest, to try and rest your mind as well as your body, whether that's reading books, watching DVDs, chatting to, your friends and family, just sitting there with your legs up. If you can't sleep, maybe just listen to some relaxing music, because at least then your body is resting, it's recovering, it's healing, and it's preparing for what you're about to do. But don't increase the anxiety by thinking I need to get 8 hours sleep, because I bet your bottom dollar or any dollar that
you won't.
No professional athlete or amateur athlete is getting 8 hours of shut-eye the night before the race.
It's like that night before anything that you've got the following morning. You're literally waking up every hour just wondering, am I going to sleep through my alarm? I'm not getting to sleep. So just relax.
Yeah, absolutely. Just relax and know that your alarm will go off, but it's always sensible to set 2 alarms.
Definitely.
Just in case. That's another top tip.
Talking of relaxation and recovery, Paul sent us a question. He says, I have a question for a legend. Recovery method, cold or hot bath, yoga, protein shakes. So essentially, what's the best thing for recovery, Chrissie?
Is that legend you or me?
I think it might be you.
I'll answer it, shall I? Recovery methods. They're diverse, actually. So resting is the most important means of recovery, resting your mind as well as your body. So every amateur athlete, I think, should have a rest day once every 7 or 10 days, a full rest day. Professional athletes, not necessary, because we spend 4 hours or 6 hours a day training, and we spend 18 hours sitting on our backsides. So we get that rest that amateur athletes don't. So, taking a rest day and taking an off season is really, really important for recovery. I never did ice baths. They just didn't work for me. I used these pneumatic boots called Normatec boots, which were phenomenal, probably beyond the price point of many people, but they really worked. I also used compression socks. But during hill sessions on the run, I used them, but also definitely to recover, they were useful. And lastly, nutrition, absolutely fundamental. You are what you eat, as the old adage goes. And recovering from hard sessions is absolutely paramount, and that's where the protein carbohydrate mix really comes into its own. And if you've done a hard session, a long session, you really want to try and get something in, that has got a high protein carbohydrate content, within 15-20 minutes of finishing. I always had a smoothie, which was kind of ground nuts and seeds for protein, kind of yogurt, banana, frozen berries. I used to put some molasses in, which is great for iron. Ice and water. You can, throw in anything in, but they're really, really good. And especially if you're on the go, having one of those, as a portable drink, can really, really help with recovery. But as I said, you are what you eat, and nutrition is a really important pillar, not only for performance, but for recovery.
Louise Wolsey asked about mental toughness, nature or nurture, but I think we covered that one a little bit earlier. So we'll move on to one from Tej Thacker, which was having an all or nothing character, good or bad?
Good if managed. I do have an all or nothing character when it comes to many things, including drinking coffee. So when I was pregnant and now postnatally, I've had to just say no coffee, because moderation.
So have you given it up totally?
Given it up totally, because I think if I have one, it's just like a box of Pringles. I just keep going. So I've definitely on the decaf, which doesn't quite
hit the spot, does it?
Yeah, I think it compels you to succeed. It gives you drive. It gives you determination. It can also make you very, very hard on yourself and very, very self-critical, which I am, which also kind of compels me to succeed. But it does need to be managed. Otherwise, you risk, injury or exhaustion or stress. And it's important that you lean on others, and others are able to recognize the kind of excessive nature when you sometimes can't. And so that was why a coach for me was so important, because both my coaches managed to rein me in rather than encouraging me to do more, which I didn't really need.
Why Does a Dog has asked, what were you really thinking?
What are they called? Dog? Why?
Why Does a Dog? At Why Does a Dog on Twitter.
At Why Does a Dog? Fantastic.
Yep, good Twitter handle. So yep. What were you really thinking when you flatted in Kona? Now, Beck Keat has interacted with us on this one, because Rob, who does the podcast with me, says that you were perhaps thinking to her, she should never have to buy a drink again in her life.
She never has to buy a drink again in her life if she's in my company, I tell you that much. No, and we'll remain great friends. I think that cemented our friendship. In answer to the question, what was I thinking? Probably not for public consumption, but in actual fact, in some respects I was relieved, because without wanting to be too graphic, I'd had diarrhea on the start line in the swim, and was really needing the toilet on the bike, and obviously not really wanting to stop. So it gave me the opportunity to delve into the bushes. Unfortunately, the NBC cameraman also thought that was something that was worth watching and capturing on film, which I didn't necessarily agree with, nor with the viewing public.
Oh,
so
no.
That's embarrassing. But it did give me the opportunity to kind of collect myself and calm myself a little bit. And also earlier that year, Alpe d'Huez, the previous year actually, 2007, I'd flatted and still won. And I know that the World Championships is very different, but when you've had instances like that, you know that it's not all over Red Rover. You know that you can come back from flat tires, from cramps, from your goggles getting knocked off in the swim. It's a long day out there, and so much can change. We've seen it change. We've seen people that are leading up until 30k only to, fall over by the side of the road in the last few miles. You've got to keep fighting, you've got to keep pushing, and you've got to keep your head in the game. So whilst on the one hand, having a flat tire is the worst thing that possibly happened because you lose 10 minutes. On the other hand, you've had 10 minutes to kind of have a drink, calm yourself down, cool yourself down, and then get on the road. And, I can't finish this without, giving credit where credit's due to Beck Keat, because she gave me the gas canister when she really, didn't have to, didn't need to, didn't owe me anything. She wasn't even a team member of mine at that point. So for her to do that is, I think, is the ultimate in kind of sportswomanship, and I'll be forever grateful.
Final few questions here, just a few quick answers on this one, all right?
Okay, quick.
Okay, so Erin Kernan asks, what's your most indulgent post-race meal ever?
Oh Lord, that has to be after Ironman Arizona 2010, and I forget the figures. There were 10 donuts, two burgers, a kebab, and something else, which I can't. Oh, a pizza. There was a pizza in there that Jordan Rapp kindly brought down to the finish line for all the volunteers, but I had a few sneaky slices. So that was the overindulgence and excess of Ironman Arizona, but post-race excess is something that I've always excelled at, so I make no apologies for it.
Impressive. Okay, so Cardiff runners want to say best recovery cake.
It's got to be something Fuel by Cake, Helen. If I'm to pick one, let's go for Vassos Alexander's avocado delight. I don't know what there's a few eggs and nuts and avocado, obviously.
Raisins and avocado in the cake.
It's full of protein and carbohydrate goodness, and Vassos. And Vassos invented it, so it's
got to be good. Dylan Dahlquist asks, what is one quirky thing that no one knows about you, Chrissie? We are all about to know.
Oh gosh, one quirky thing. I've got 4 toes the same length. It's called Morton's foot, apparently.
On your left or right, or on both?
Both, actually. And I think I'm really worried that our daughter's inherited it. So I'm hoping that one of the toes gets a bit of a growth spurt, because at the moment she's got these weird feet like me.
Oh, poor Esme. Right, final question. Okay, this one comes from Matt Wackett. Would you rather sit on a return train from Norwich to Manchester, or complete Kona on a penny farthing?
Oh, penny farthing.
Seriously?
Every day of the week. Well, maybe not every day of the week, but it'd be a recipe for chafing. But I've been on trains in Norfolk, which is where I'm from, and they stop at every single tree or bush or tractor, and at least if you're on a penny farthing, you're going somewhere, albeit slow. You haven't got to stop at every tree. So I do Kona on a penny farthing. I just hope I'd make the cutoff.
You probably would.
I'd give it my best shot.
Crosswinds on a penny farthing might be something.
It would be challenging, but I'd wear an aero helmet just for effect.
And compression socks.
And compression socks, of course, and maybe like a trilby or something, whatever they wore when penny farthings were all the rage. A Victorian skirt.
Fantastic. Chrissie, we will leave it there. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for all of your time as well. And I think we heard a little bit of Esme in the background. Is she all right?
She's. I'm currently juggling balls, so she's currently feeding, but she's doing very, very well. She's blossoming, blooming, gaining weight, starting to be more alert, trying to stand up, which is slightly worrying. We think we might have a little Energizer bunny on our hands, and I don't know where she gets that from. But no, all is well in our family's world. But thank you, thanks for asking.
Excellent. Well, Chrissie, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Helen, and all the best with what you do, and thanks for what you're doing for triathlon, not only at the professional level but also at the grassroots level. We really appreciate it.
There you go, Rob. Wasn't it a fascinating interview?
Hells, I've got to give you credit, mate. I really enjoyed that. I thought you did one of the best jobs, and I've heard a lot of interviews with her. I'm not just saying this. She's been on Breakfast with Bob and all those radio shows in the US. You were good at getting in there and, asking the questions about, go on, give us an example of a workout then. So who'd have thought a double bike day?
It's mental. When she started saying, so we started off with a 10K swim for Hilary Biscay's birthday. Who had asked for it? You're like, what?
Yeah. Please, would you ask for that for your birthday, Hells?
Would I ask for a 10K swim for birthday? No, I'd say, Rob, can I have my birthday off, please?
100 by 100 for your birthday?
No. That would be like, goodbye arms. Rob, could I have an arm transplant for next year, please? Thank you.
I don't think between the two of us we could swim 100 by 100. No. Could we, doing it as a tag team?
No. So, that was just the beginning of the day, though. And that's what's... Yeah. It's incredible. It's really incredible. And I think, when I kicked off the interview and I sort of said, do you have to pinch yourself? Was it all a little bit of a dream? And because she's not racing in triathlons any longer. She hasn't been since her final World Championship win in Kona, which was 2011, wasn't it?
What was her career? Was it 5 years and 4 titles?
So she
Is that
won
right?
2007. Yeah, was the first one, wasn't it? So 4 titles.
7, 8, 9 missed a year, 1 in 10.
So 7, 8, 9 missed 10, and then came back in 11 and won.
There you go. So 7. So it's really only 4 calendar years, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Amazing.
It's incredible. And we touched on the all or nothing personality, didn't we? And I think that was obviously part of it.
I loved that. I can't drink coffee anymore.
Everyone's going, oh my goodness, you can't drink coffee.
I tell you what, right, I bet there's more people listening to this and relating to that comment and thinking, well, maybe not coffee, but I can't eat chocolate because if I have one bite of it, I'm eating 4 bounties,
Yep.
If I have a pint of beer, I'm drinking 7 of them. I think a lot of people out there who are into triathlon and a repetitive motion as a meditation can understand the obsessive and addictive personality, right?
Absolutely, because I think we all are. And the other thing which I thought was quite interesting, it's a good job that we did mention the Clumber Park Duathlon earlier, Rob, because she said about the importance of supporting, the smaller races, the local races, and the fact that really is so important within the sport. So it's not just all about
Loved that.
Yeah.
We've started taking Xander down to Junior Park Run, and it's just brilliant the fact that, if people listening haven't been and they've got kids of that age, Xander's only 4, and you roll up in the car park at like maybe 10 to 9 and the race starts at 9, and there's just a bunch of guys just putting the course out. Bang, 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 bang. Out go the thing. Some volunteers go out. The kids do the thing and then run around, and they finish 10 or 12 minutes later, and it's all packed away and everyone's in the cars by 9:30. It's
great.
It's absolutely brilliant.
Isn't it? It's really, I love it. No, I really enjoyed interviewing her, and it was really good of her to give up, that big chunk of time.
An hour of a time.
Yeah.
And to be
breastfeeding
us at the same time.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So
good work, Chrissie.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. And if you are a new listener to the podcast, well then, hello, and you can
hello.
check out some of our previous episodes. They're all up on the website, which is oxygenaddict.com/podcast. It's obviously in iTunes as well. It's on Stitcher, so you can just download it regularly. But that's where you'll find it. And there's loads of other previous interviews with GBH groupers, with other pro triathletes, and just some really interesting people that we think you might like to listen to.
Yeah, some real gold buried in there. Go back and listen to Eddie Brocklesby.
Oh.
She was awesome.
Yes, definitely go back and listen to Eddie Brocklesby if you want a little bit of inspiration.
Yeah, if you've been brought here by one of the like top male age grouper type interviews we've done, go back and listen to Eddie. She's I wanted her to be my celebrity grandma by the time we finished that interview. She's lovely.
She is one of life's really good people. She does cheerleading as well, Rob. Just putting it out.
Does she really?
Yeah, she does. She's in a cheerleading group now in London.
We should get her back on, shouldn't we, and talk about her latest Ironman?
Well, she's doing Lanzarote, I think, again.
She's doing it again this year?
Yeah.
Right, well, we'll get her on after that then. That's in a few weeks' time, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
We'll
line that one up. And Rob, I think we were going to mention, next week we've got another good interview coming up, haven't we?
Yeah, next week we're going to have a double interview. We're going to have Tom Hughes, who basically helped you out, didn't he? We
chatted about running, all about running. It's really, really fascinating. So Tom essentially he does running analysis, but he's more than that. He's a doctor. He knows all about biomechanics. And he had heard that I was having a slight problem with my foot, so he got in touch and we sent some videos over, and we'll kind of link up with those videos. And yeah, but it's really, really interesting to do with running, the mechanics of running, and how to prevent injuries with running.
What's his website? Do you know off the top of your head?
Trimechanics.
Trimechanics.com.
I'm just going to get it right now. So
all right, no worries.
It is.
So
it is trimechanics.co.uk.
.co.uk. Cool. So we're going to have him on, and we're also going to have Paul Burton, who a lot of people will know from Twitter, who is at Pablo Burt, another super fast team free speed dude who was out in Kona, a good mate and training partner of Charlie Pennington, who was on a few weeks ago, and Charlie turned us on to him and got a really good interview with him. And again, it's a great story of training hard, getting good, getting to the sharp end of the race, and racing right at the very front of the age group race in Kona. So that's a real good one to look out for.
Fantastic. So that is next week. Rob, I want to hear about, lots of people support our show, don't they?
Lots of people support our show. Our lovely patrons, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Let's read them out. We've got people who, let's be honest, Hells, it's nice, isn't it? The fact that we're both managing to make a bit of a living doing this these days, and people who support the show really help us out. You can make a donation of £2, £5 or £10 a month to listen to the show. It's always going to be free. We're never going to make it private or do that thing where people go, you can listen to some of this for free and then some of it's you got to pay to listen to. But if you fancy supporting the show, you can do that by just clicking on the link to become a patron. And there's some natty little software that just takes £2, £5 or £10 a month, which is really cool. So our patrons we've got to be thankful for are Mike Hewison, David Meenan, Jane Stafford, Kerry McGawley, Alex Lawton, Paul Lunn, Neil Feekins, Oliver Saxon, Andy Carey, Matt Wackett. Oh, lovely Matt Wackett, great football coach. He's Anders' football coach. What a good guy. Dave Connor, who was on the training camp. Chris Brody, George Banks, Mick Oliver, and Mr. A. Ford, who we don't even know.
Adrian Ford. Yeah, Adrian's a big. Adrian's a big listener. So Adrian Ford.
Great stuff. Sorry, Adrian, I didn't know that.
There you go.
There we go. So we're really grateful to you guys. The money that you donate every week helps support the show and helps keep it rolling. So we're very thankful. And we said we'd give you a little name check, and there we go. And we're going to do an extra special podcast just for you lot.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Special patrons-only podcast later on in the year.
Brill. Now, Rob, I want to ask one other thing.
Go on.
Well, you did your run webinar last week.
We sure did.
How did it go? Does everyone know how to run an Ironman marathon better now?
Well, it was an interesting thing. We thought, right, how do we try and use the internet to get like a bit of coaching knowledge out there and promote the Team Oxygen Addict business and stuff? And I was like, well, I'm quite enjoying doing all these podcasts. Let's try and do a webinar, which is like a podcast with a bit of video, right? Yep. How hard can it be? It turns out it can be pretty bloody hard, Helen.
Go on.
No, it was all right. We did, it had a little slideshow there, and I prepared it, and it was a bit like an extended version of Coach's Couch, but with some slides to illustrate the points, and this is why we think you should do it, and here are some success stories and stuff like that. And then we took some questions and answers from people, which was quite cool because it was kind of live, so we had about nearly 100 people on watching
Wow.
the webinar live, which is kind of mind-blowing. And there's a little chat box they could type the questions into, and then Andy, my business partner, would read them out and I'd answer them. And at one point, somebody said, "Right, we're tired of looking at the slides. Can you put like the live video feed on?" So
At which point you were like, "I'm in my pajamas." No.
Well, we were all very smart in our Oxygen Addict t-shirts. We're like, "Yeah, we can do this." But what we hadn't realised was there was like a 10-second delay between us talking and like being on screen and what everyone was seeing at home, which was fine. It wasn't like, the video and the sound were in sync with each other, but we had a screen up to the left so we could see what the people at home were seeing and make sure it didn't go weird.
Yep.
And the minute that started happening, if you can imagine watching yourself with a 10-second delay,
Yeah, some weirdest
and
thing.
every time, bizarre.
Yeah.
Every time we moved, both our heads would turn to look at the other screen, and then we'd realise we'd turn and look back again. And after about 5 seconds, we were like, "Oh, you know what? We can't do this. You're gonna have to look at a slide instead." So.
I love it. So that's a little
It was good.
technical.
Yeah, it was good though.
Great. Well done.
100 odd people on a webinar. It was like being a little baby businessman. We're trying.
Fantastic.
Baby steps.
Hey,
So we're going to do another one in another month, I think, and
Good.
see if we can iron out the kinks in it a little bit.
That's it. It's all, none of us, apart from Chrissie Wellington, are amazing first, first
And
Ironman.
even she's saying, do you know what? You'd think I was dead confident, but I'm really insecure and racked with self-doubt. And I think that there comes a point where you've just got to go, I'm not going to pretend to know everything, and we're going to say, this is going to be a bit rough around the edges, but we're going to give it a go anyway. And you've got to be brave, haven't you?
You have got to be brave, but you know what? It would be boring if you didn't. So I think hats off, and you've got to give it a go, and then at least you know where you can improve and everything. So I say congratulations. So well done, oxygenaddict.com.
Can I have a fist bump of joy?
Fist pump of joy. Heading your way.
And how are you, man? How's your training been going?
Oh, Rob, I did a loop of the Ironman UK bike course on Saturday.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah. I think the best word to describe it is gritty. It is just,
Gritty.
it's so British. Yeah. It is so British. I was like, I actually quite like this. It's, really rubbish road surfaces. It's like really dreadful.
Honest. Let's say honest. It's honest road surfaces, isn't it?
No, they're rubbish.
It's not a place to bring a set of Zip 808 tubs to and run 160 PSI, is it?
No. It was, there were sections of it which were going through, slightly built up parts of the northwest.
Yeah.
And then there are other sections which are bleak as anything, when you go above Sheep House and then up there. But it's like, wow, this is absolutely stunning. And you could imagine on a sunny day, which we'll never get, it's, absolutely gorgeous. So, yeah,
You get a lot of variety, don't you, for your money in that loop that's got to be, probably 45 miles, the loop itself.
Yep.
You get the big climb up Sheep House, you get the moors on the top, you get that death-defying drop down to Belmont.
Yeah, then a sharp left in
nearly,
the pub.
Did you nearly end up in the other side of the road?
No, but I was totally in the wrong gear. My chain came off.
Good, get out of the way in training.
Well, exactly.
And then you've got that big drag up again, bleak moorland. Did you have a headwind there? The old Belmont headwind?
We got a bit of that bit that was really bleak and just went on forever. And you're thinking, where's the roundabout?
Yeah, and big long swooping descent to the roundabout, and then
first.
Does it still go through? It doesn't anymore, does it? You don't go through the industrial estate anymore.
Oh, we didn't get that joy. No.
No, it goes past there, and then you turn right a bit further on. You used to go down through the industrial estate where Merlin Cycles is.
Nice.
And it was brilliant because it was like a brand new, really wide, smooth road surface, and you'd get about 5 minutes of,
non-water bottles falling out of cages.
The kind of, this is what you could have won if you'd come to Austria, that kind of thing.
I did think, this really isn't Austria, is it? I was like, it's not exactly picture postcard.
But do you know what? It's going to play into your benefit, that, because you know what to expect. You train up here all the time, and on race day, when everyone else who you're racing against is thinking, wow, poor me, the road's so rubbish.
Yeah.
You'll just be like, and I'm just drilling it.
I really enjoyed it. After 2 hours, I must admit, I was like, Rich, I'm totally having a bowl of chips in that pub when we get back to the car.
Good
for you.
They were amazing. Anyway,
proper northern
grub.
Northern, what's it called? Recovery shake. A bag of recovery shake, please.
Absolutely, yep, with a bit of tomato ketchup.
Right, let's wrap it up. Come on, let's let these listeners go.
Oh, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for all of your questions for Chrissie's interview. It was really great to get them. So, thank you for that. Definitely.
Hope you've enjoyed it. Give us some love on Twitter if you liked it. Facebook about it, tweet about it. Let's get the word out there. Let's see if we can increase the downloads of this show, because Chrissie Wellington is back on the scene and we need to get the word out about her.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. I'm Coach Rob Wilby.
I'm Helen Murray.
And you've been listening to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. Have a great training and racing week, and we'll speak to you all again soon. Cheers now.